I'm Dr. Lindsay Pollock, and I am here representing Sarasota University this evening. We are the Montessori University, the first MACD accredited uh, university institution of higher education. So we are delighted to be able to now offer bachelor's completion degrees, master's degrees in Montessori education and Montessori leadership. And we are launching our doctoral program in summer of 2025. Super excited about that. So big work, and thanks to all of the folks who have been a part of that big work, supporting us and cheering us on and helping us along the way. So if you're interested in Sarasota University, please email us at info@sarasotauniversity.edu. And I'll put that in the chat as well. If you would, please tonight, just take a moment to type in your name in the chat and let us know where you are coming to us from. I see lots of familiar faces. Deborah, Lydia, Lorna, oh, all the folks from our cohort, Dr. Blunt. Thank you all for being here tonight. Sure, I'm overlooking lots of folks. And again, thank you. We've got folks here from Indiana, Virginia, Florida, Illinois, Nova Scotia, excuse me, New Jersey, Tampa Bay, Virginia, and to all of our friends impacted by the storms, I should say. Thank you for being here tonight. And oh my gosh, I can't even imagine what's been going on in so many communities. We have hurricanes in Houston as well, but wow, y'all have had a couple of hits in Florida and beyond that have been so significant. So we've been sending lots of energy positive energy to you from Houston. As we go through the evening, if you have questions that come up tonight, please type them in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat for our presenter tonight, the magnificent Sheila Linville, who founded Lake Mary Montessori Academy in 1995, where she was a beloved teacher and head of school for almost 3 decades until her retirement in 2021. I don't know how that's possible, Sheila. You look so young and energetic. You must have started when you were a teenager. Sheila is an educator, mentor, coach, and inspiration to every life she touches, including teachers, parents, and children in her local sphere of influence. And Sheila and I were talking just a bit before we started, and Sheila's superpower is that she grows things. She loves to support the development of new programs, and she continues to be active now in her quote unquote retirement, as she's active with school leadership development through AMS's Educational Leadership Fellowship Program, ELF, and with the Center for Guided Montessori Studies as a leadership program practicum advisor and instructional guide. She has created the Andrews Educational Institute, which provides consultative services to Montessori and other progressive educational school leaders, teachers, and parents. Her institute promotes a holistic approach to creating safe and supporting learning environments designed to strengthen and empower families. Sheila currently serves as the International Montessori Council Director of School Accreditation and Affiliation. And Sheila continues to amaze and astound me. When she took over her role in accreditation, there were 12 accredited schools, and she's doubled that number to 22, with 19 schools in the pipeline for accreditation. So Sheila, I thank you so much for being here this evening. We asked you to come in and change the schedule for us. And as always, you were right there ready to go. So without any further ado, I'll hand it over to Sheila. And again, Sheila, thank you. I know we have a treat in store for us tonight.
Oh, Lindsay, thank you so much. It really is a pleasure to be here with everyone this evening. I'm really excited to join Sarasota University in the Colloquium series, and the topic is near and dear to my heart. So, our topic tonight is breaking through the bias of boy behavior, creating successful classroom environments for high energy boys. So, as we go through our conversation tonight and really talk about boy behavior, I really want to encourage you to use the chat function and to communicate back and forth with me. I much I I much more enjoy in some ways presenting in person just because there's an energy in creating with the audience, but I will certainly do my best tonight and really share my information with you, certainly. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about who I am. I know Lindsay did a bit, but I was the founder and executive director and teacher at every level at Lake Mary Montessori Academy. And in doing that, I learned so much about boy behavior and what works with boys, and really where guides get stuck. Where is that sticky part that there is a misunderstanding of what we need from boys and what boys are able to give us, certainly. I hold an AMS early childhood credential, and that was way back in 1992. That was a long time ago. And I also have an AMS Elementary 1 credential. And I launched all those programs at my own school and help other schools with that now. I have a bachelor's degree in communications with an emphasis on fundraising, and I have a master's degree in teaching with an emphasis on Montessori education from Rollins College. I do many, many, many things. But when I look at my personal life, boys are everywhere in my life and bunches and bunches and bunches of them. So I was the only girl growing up in a household with two brothers, older brothers, and there were oodles and oodles of boys everywhere. Boy Scout troops, fishing clubs, baseball teams. My mom was a den mother for the Cub Scouts, baseball, basketball. There was always a lot of boys in my house growing up. And it really served me well because I realized that I understood how boys tick. So in my first teaching experience, I had the opportunity to teach in a self-contained Montessori classroom that had 22 children, and 18 of them were second grade boys. And if any of you have ever taught second grade boys, you know there's a lot of energy in that classroom. And since that experience, a long, long time ago, my classes, my school, my household overflows with boys. Even if I engage with something through our church, I always end up with a group that has 15 boys and 3 girls. So the span of boy development is very fascinating to me, and I have some excellent resources for you as a parent, or you as a school leader, or you as a guide. But I really want to talk about how do we learn to understand the boy brain, and what is that all about? So this is what we'll cover in today's session. The first thing we'll do is talk about the biology of the boy brain. And we'll dig in to how boys develop and what are those characteristics in boys in early childhood and then in those elementary years. So our conversation specifically this evening will be early childhood through for elementary, which is that 3-year-old through that 12-year-old. And I'll provide you with information on neurobiology that may likely impact the boys' behaviors in the classrooms. Then we'll discuss common expectations of the guides and what the Montessori guides are looking for in the classroom and what boys bring to the table every day and how that leads to challenges. And then we'll come together and really talk about strategies. So we'll close today's session by considering what we can do differently if we're a leader of a school or a teacher in the classroom or a parent of a boy. And we'll end with a whole bunch of resources for you tonight. So let's kind of start to dig in tonight. I will have a chance to ask questions and take information through the chat, and Dr. Pollock will do that for me. So let's get to a quote from Maria Montessori that I've related to boy behavior. These children reveal to us the most vital need of their development, saying, "Help me do it myself." And my question is, what do boys tell us with their behavior that they need? What do boys tell us with their words and their actions in the classroom? And what I think they're saying is follow me, watch me, observe me, and find out what I need. Their misbehavior or behaviors that we consider misbehavior is really truly communication of their own developmental stage. And that goes from little ones who are 3 all the way to those upper elementary ones who are 12. So let's get to some vocabulary tonight. And I think it's important to begin by talking about the vocabulary around gender, biological gender, and then also gender identification. So the National Association of School Psychologists says there's 3 really important concepts we need to know when we're talking about this. And one is the biological sex. So the biological sex is based upon a newborn's genitalia and associated with chromosomes, hormones, and the reproductive structure in the body. So that's the biological gender. The next is gender identity. And that is a person's innermost concept of themselves as a male, a female, neither, or a blend of 2 or more gender identifications. So that's when we're speaking about gender identity. The next topic is gender expression. So gender expression is the way in which people externally communicate their gender identity to others. And they communicate that through their behavior, through their clothing, through their haircut, through their voice, and other ways that they present themselves. During our presentation tonight, we will be discussing the biological basis of behavior common to those assigned male at birth. It's important to recognize, however, that a student's gender identity and gender expression may differ from their biological sex. But we're really focusing on the gender identification of male at birth. Okay, that's where we'll dig in tonight. There's an awesome video, it's a YouTube by Benita Ardent, and he ascertains in this video that boys are now 2 years behind girls. There's this gender gap with education. And, I always muse and question, is it really that boys are 2 years behind, or that we're looking at an educational system that is really facilitated toward the female gender? But if you're looking to dig into this, this is a great YouTube video. And when I think about that gender gap in relation to children in a Montessori classroom, I think of those little guys that come into that early childhood classroom. And we know that there is a differentiation between how girls develop oral language and communication and social emotional language in relation to boys. And there is a gap there. Is it a gap based just upon gender? I don't know the answer to that. But I do know that there is something about looking at the language development of boys and girls, not only the oral language, the receptive language, the social emotional language, the writing skills. There's a whole bunch of components that come together there. In lower elementary, there is this gender gap between impulse control, organizational skills, and writing skills. When you go into a lower elementary classroom, the boys have stuff everywhere. It really just is, their projects are less organized. Often they have a sense of impulse control as well, the ability to kind of withhold their behavior, and then also their writing skills. And then when we look at upper elementary, We look at this difference between the genders with boys having difficulty articulating what they're feeling and also a need to stretch or break boundaries or rules. So some of this behavior can seem that it's oppositional or defiant, where it just really isn't. It's just boy behavior. So the biology of boys. So I really dug into some work by Dr. George Lazarus, and he is at Columbia University, and he is the associate clinical professor of pediatrics. Whenever I'm thinking about development, I really want to dig into what's the biology, what is the research saying about this? And he had some marked differences between boys and girls that I'd love to share with you. So there are several marked differences in boys and girls' biological development throughout childhood and adolescence. In fact, Dr. Lazarus says that boys and girls differ in the very earliest stages of embryonic development. At the fetal stage, the testosterone level in boys have already reached high intensity, influencing the physical development of their brain from the time they're in utero. From birth, boys become more active and wakeful than girls. However, girls interact, even babies, they're interested in interacting more with people. And as they go into those early years in a primary classroom, they're much more focused on that social development and that relational perspective, where boys are not. They are wired for activity and they are ready to go when they come into the classroom. So when you're bringing those little ones into the classroom, even at the 3-year-old level, the boys are everywhere. They are pushing and rolling and touching and moving, and because they are wired for activity. There's also structural differences in at least 7 measured brain structures and markers between males and females. The boy brain is at least 10 times larger than a girl, but the girl brain has both halves of the brain interconnecting and flowing with language. Boys' brains secrete more testosterone and less serotonin, and that's really important. So when we're looking at boys and girls a similar age, so let's say we're looking at early childhood or lower elementary children, the boys have less serotonin and the girls have more serotonin. And among other things, serotonin acts as an impulse control agent and is responsible for inhibiting some aggressive effects of testosterone. The frontal lobe, that executive function in a girl's brain, also grows at earlier stages. And they can multitask and do things that boys can't do. They can shift their attention really seamlessly and easily. They'll listen because they're more in a relationship with a teacher. The male brain has more spinal fluid in the brain stem, making boys more physical than girls. When we look at estrogen provides the biochemical basis for increased brain activity. A female brain has up to 15% more blood flow than a male brain at any given moment. Brain research shows that the female brain is at work in more sections than the male brain is. Even when a female brain is in a state of rest, it doesn't kind of shut down. I think about a computer going to sleep. That's why I think of the boy brain. So even if a female student is bored, she can actively continue to process the information. But for the boy brain, often it's on and off. I have a story about this just in my neighborhood. So I have 2 boys, And in the afternoons, we were climbing trees in the creek, bouncing basketballs, playing football, riding bikes, running around. And I have a friend of mine, Lisa, and she had two girls the same age as my, similar ages of my boys. And she'd drive by in her little minivan as I'm sweating outside in the Florida sun with these boys, or up in a tree, or whatever we were doing the day. And she would say to me, "Oh, Sheila, you look really busy out there." And I would laugh and I would say, "Well, it's boys, we're busy outside." And she would say something silly like she was going home to knit or do art projects. Her girls were completely different than my boys. And this really fascinated her because she didn't have any brothers. So she got pregnant with her third child and she had a boy. And about 3 years in, where was she? She was outside with Jackson every afternoon doing the same things I was doing with my boys. So the biology of the brain that Dr. Lazarus is speaking about, I have seen with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of children over time. If you're in a classroom with the pink tower, once one of the boys builds the pink tower, they knock it down or they roll on top of it. They will also really get physical with each other really quickly. They'll be in a tussle before you even know what happened, and then they're not sure what has happened. Where little girls have a lot more language development and social emotional skills. And as teachers, sometimes we have a bias or a preference for behavior. And our preference can sometimes be girl generated. That feels most comfortable. Also, if you do not have boys in your family, you're not a mother of boys, you don't have brothers and uncles, and you might not even know what boy behavior is. It may feel really different. It has a different energy to it. So when you come into a house that has little boys or a classroom that has a little boys, you are outside and you are running and you are playing sports and it is high energy. There's an actual feeling in the air that's different. So collaborative words to describe boys' behavior. So when I talk to guides in particular, Montessori teachers that are at these different levels, what challenges them and what frustrates them are very much the same. So what challenges the lead is that boys have trouble listening, sitting still, following directions. They're extremely active. They don't listen. They're not interested in connecting with the adult in the classroom. They're more interested in what they're doing rather than what the lead is showing them. And these are super frustrating. When you're a guide, when I was a guide in that classroom with 18 boys and 4 girls, I learned something really important. And I would love to share that with you because it has been the crux that has made it so interesting for me for my entire career. And that is, I had to lean into boy behavior. I had to be interested in what they were interested in. I had to really look at my own biases with girls and boys. And although the girls' behavior in classrooms can be more compliant than a boy behavior, it doesn't mean that the boy is intentionally doing that. So what I would say to leads, to lean into what those boys need. To go back to Maria Montessori's quote at the beginning of our conversation, that that boy is saying to you, watch me, follow me, observe me, and find out what I need. And a lot of times it's different than what you have planned for the day. When we look at the behaviors that challenge and frustrates the lead, they're also very similar behaviors that make the lead feel inadequate. So if you teach on an upper elementary level and you have a recess or a PE time, they are physical with each other outside. And when you bring them inside, from whatever activity it is, you need time to decompress because they are competitive at that age and they can be aggressive and unkind and short and really wanting to be kind of the lead dog in what's going on, whatever that circumstance is. So I have found over many, many
Sheila,
years, yes,
I am so sorry to interrupt you because I'm so fascinated. I'm so busy taking notes. I hadn't even noticed that the PowerPoint hasn't. We haven't been sharing the PowerPoint. Are you seeing the?
there we go. Can you see it now?
Not yet.
Lindsay, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry about that. I thought that we had had some challenges earlier.
We had, and then it came up, and I'm just so fascinated with everything you're saying. Just writing down fast and furious, and
Okay, so let's see if we can try it again, Lindsay. So can you see it now by any chance?
nope.
Oh, Lindsay, that's killing me because the PowerPoint is so fun.
It is.
It is fun. I'm not quite sure what to do about that, Lindsay. If I go and let me pull this down a little because I have my slideshow. Can you see me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, that's one positive thing. Um, so Lindsay, I'm not quite sure how to problem solve that with you. I shared my presentation and it's not coming up.
If I'm not sure if you can.
I just came out of it and I'm going back in it. Can
Okay,
you see
let's
it
try.
now?
No.
Ah, Lindsay, I'm so sorry. Well, I can share it with you if that will be helpful.
Yes, if you would
Um,
share it with me, let me see if maybe I can pull it up.
yeah, that would be
We
great,
had
Lindsay.
it,
Let me,
we had it going before we started.
yes, we sure did. There was some kind of a glitch with it. So, Lindsay, let me add you to my, I'll share it right with you now and then see if you can pull it
Dear
up.
friend. Yep.
Okay. Because anybody that knows me knows that this is my nervous piece or is the technology. It just never works for me. And I feel like I have a jinx. Can you see it now, Lindsay?
I have it open. And Sheila,
Okay.
what slide would you like me to start on?
I'm on slide 9.
All right. Not a problem. Let's get that pulled up.
Good.
Yep. It's coming.
Okay.
Be there any minute. Can you all see the PowerPoint now?
Yes. Thank you, Lindsay. And
Absolutely.
then when I move to the next slide, I'll let you know so you can move it
Okay.
forward, Lindsay.
Sounds like a
So
plan.
when we're looking, thank you everyone for your patience. When you're looking at the leads, and when I talk with teachers in all different kinds of settings for Montessori schools, from micro schools to public district schools to small schools. I was just at a religious school. The teachers feel inadequate and they don't know what to do. And then when they're talking with the parents, they're not even sure how to describe the behavior in the classroom. So, my advice is to dig in. I have some great resources, get a book study going, start understanding what behavior is appropriate for boys at different ages. And we're going to dig into that right now. Lindsay, can you move to slide 10? Great. So this slide is giving us the developmental stages. So this comes from the book, The Wild Things, The Art of Nurturing Boys by Stephen James and David Thomas. And it outlines the stages of boy behavior and boy development. And it aligns in some ways with how we look at children in a Montessori environment. So we'll focus on the 3 categories that apply for early childhood to elementary, um, and then to upper elementary. So we'll look at, first of all, the explorer. Who is the explorer?
Did
This
I
is for
go?
children. Sorry, Lindsay.
Oh, sorry. My apologies. I hit a button and I went I had to quickly. Sorry, Sheila.
Well, that's okay, no problem. So here, looking at the boy being the explorer. So boys at this age are active, they're aggressive, they're curious, and they're self-determined. If they want to do something, they are going to do it. They want to climb the tree, climb the fence, get around something, build something. They are not very engaged with how other people are feeling. And sometimes we can look at those boys and think, what are they doing? But the investigation of the world and their discovery is more important than their relationship with you as the adult or the other children in the classroom. The other thing with boys this age is their moods can swing on a dime, and a lot of their activity fuels their aggression, which is also their emotional response to communication. Early childhood teachers describe the same things. That's what makes them so frustrated. When we look at the lover or the relational stage, we're looking at boys that are now between 5 and 8. And although they may exhibit some of the characteristics of the explorer, they are more tender, they're more relationally driven, and they're more expressive. They tend to be full of life and full of enthusiasm. They often express their feelings by physically, or they become defensive with each other, or critical or competitive, and they struggle with managing all the impulses that they have going on. This is what really makes a lower elementary guide in Montessori have challenges, because their impulses cause them to to lose their tempers. They're impatient, um, and they're not sure another way to do it yet. Then you go into that 9 to 12-year-old in that individual stage. And at this level, they experience a great deal of confusion at this time during puberty, right? That testosterone starts pumping, is what I like to say. And their physical and emotional development is reflected from that. Some of the energy and the aggressiveness in the explorer age has subsided, certainly, but now they have a need for power and autonomy. This stage, boys are mischievous, they're competitive, and they want a camaraderie amongst them. They also feel like boundaries and regulations and rules are confining. They still want and need that connection and that affection and that emotional guidance from you, but they have trouble articulating themselves. So everything, all their feelings, sadness, hurt, fear, loneliness, it can really come out as anger. And that is so confusing to guides. Lindsay, can you move it to the next slide and we'll get into the myths? Thank you. So the myths with boys, I love these pictures because I think that is how we experience these young boys, sometimes full of energy, full of life, full of vim and vigor, full of themselves in lots of ways. And one of the myths we have is that their choices are deliberate and intentional, which I don't experience that with most boys. I feel like they are propelled by energy and activity and inquisitiveness, and a lot of their behavior is not deliberate or intentional. And the other myth is that we think they have more social inhibitory control than they display. Well, if they just could listen, if they would just have their self-control, if they would just line up and keep their hands to themselves, right? But what they're showing you is what they have. That's their playbook. And other times you can feel in early childhood or lower elementary that they don't want to be in a relationship with you. They don't care about you. Those are not true. Those are just myths. They are more egocentric than relational, but they're showing you who they are, and they need you to see that. Lindsay, could you take it to the next slide? How are they feeling? So, in talking with boys of all different ages in situations, social situations, in classrooms where they need to be taken out for something, or the teacher needs to talk to them, or all the kiddos I needed to talk with, or interact with, or help in guidance meetings with, these are the three feelings the boys have. They are misunderstood. So, what you want and you need them to do, they don't understand what the expectation is. They oftentimes feel very ashamed because it's always them. It's always John or Robbie or Martin, or it's always them is how they feel. And then the other thing that they feel is just kind of confused. I don't know if you've ever been in a lower elementary classroom with boys, but they're out on the sport court or on the soccer field and it's recess, and all of a sudden there's a tussle going on, and they both kind of stand up and they don't know who pushed each other first. So sometimes that energy can just happen. It's just like dynamite. It just does occur. Lindsay, would you mind moving it to move the next slide for me, my friend? And I love this next slide. I love it because their moods and emotions. I feel like this picture depicts little boys so well. This sense of, I'm in trouble. What did I do? What's going on? Or this anger at not being understood, or the introspection and somebody trying to talk to them about what's been going on. It's really hard to be a little boy. It's really, really challenging. And what we want to do is maximize the strengths of the child. So Maria Montessori said, for such a delicate mission, great art is required to suggest the right moment and to limit intervention, lest one should disturb or lead astray rather than help the soul, which is coming to life and which will live by virtue of its own efforts. The boy's heart and his soul is there. It's seeing it. It's coming up with strategies. It's embracing it. You can go to the next slide, Lindsay. Okay, strategies, right? This is where teachers, when I present this in a conference and there's a live audience, they're just waiting. Well, what do we do now? And so what you do now is you really start to look at the boy and the heart of a boy. This is an awesome book. It's The Heart of the Boy by Kate Parker. And it talks about how boys develop and what they need. The next slide you can share, Lindsay, as well. Movement is the answer. People are asking me, what do we need to do? You need to be moving, running, playing, engaging, having nature classrooms they can go inside and outside of. And children who are given the opportunity to move tend to have better academic achievement, better school attendance, and fewer disciplinary problems. And when we're looking at problems in the classroom, they're mostly social. So what are the nuggets of wisdom? So what are you taking away from the conversation tonight that could help you or a child or a parent at your school? So I'd love just to stop here for a minute and to reflect, and for you to put into the chat a nugget of wisdom for one of these, for yourself, for a child, or for a parent that you can share. And Lindsay can
Sheila,
let me know. Yes.
are you able to see the chat? Because now that I'm sharing, I'm having a
I
hard time.
cannot see the chat, so
All
you'll have to
right.
tell me what it's saying, Lindsay.
All right. Let me stop sharing and then I can go back to the chat. Let's see. Let them move.
Yes. Yeah. You know, and be interested in what they're interested in with movement. Play with them. Get outside. Play basketball, football, soccer. Camp with them. Climb trees. The more they move, their brain stays engaged.
Mm-hmm.
Right? when we're looking, I have a story I'll tell you about a little boy named Zachary, and he really opened up my eyes. And it was a gift of wisdom for other children. Um, he was a little guy that I had in early childhood, and he really struggled to follow rules, to pay attention, to listen, all of the things, right? And when he was in lower elementary, maybe in second grade, his parents decided to took him for an evaluation for ADHD, and they decided to have a pharmaceutical intervention with Zachary. And Zachary came in to me on a Tuesday because had no school on Monday. And he came in and he was so excited. And he said, Miss Linville, to tell you this. I'm like, well, what's Zachary? He said, well, something amazing has happened for me. I said, well, what is that? He said, well, Best Buys or Sears, and all the TVs are on you have 25 TVs and they're on so loud. It's like that's what my life was for a long time. But he's like, now I can focus on one thing at a time. So
Oh.
when we look at ADHD as well, it's just the percentage of boys that have ADHD is another component that goes into the behavior sometimes. And when we're trying to look at typical development, we might have some kiddos out of that typical development bell curve that really might need some more looking at from a behavioral perspective or a guidance person.
We're getting a lot more comments, Sheila. We make connections with them. Children should be moving, big movements, not just walking. Unfair bias expectations, seek to understand, believe that they're doing as well as they can, assume the best.
Yes.
Question from Amy, have you researched big body play?
So I haven't, is there a book that you're referring to, Amy, or something in particular?
I think there are books on it. I just remember being
Oh, is
at
there?
a school where we encouraged actually big body play
Yes. Yes.
with some with some
Yes.
safety things in my, like as long as everyone
Yes.
was having fun. But
Yes.
it was something that as a staff we had to kind of like agree on and recognize what that was, and people had different comfort levels, but it was based on research that children, all children, but boys in particular, needed this kind of rough play. So we did it.
The Amy, yes, no, there is so much research on that. And sometimes on a playground at a Montessori school where we want things to be peaceful, again, the boy needing that large gross motor or that interactive physical play can feel like there's something wrong with them. Boys play differently than girls. Their play looks very different. So I do think that's a really important piece, Amy, especially when you're looking at that playtime outside, and you're looking at those relations, and then what are the ground rules for play that can seem a little rougher than with the girls in the classroom.
We also heard from Louise. She said the importance of outdoor environment. She can't wait until the weather gets nicer. I'm with you on that, Louise. Tristan says, parents, have your boys run around before coming to school in the morning. And that's such
Yes,
a great idea. At my school, Sheila, we opened the track an hour before
yes.
school started. So we had an outdoor walking track, and anyone could go. It was really became a favorite. Parents were out there with their kids. There were kids running the track. And even on rainy days, the kids would be like, please, please let us go to the track. No, you can't
Yeah.
be wet all day, but they just loved it. It was such good exercise for everyone, made everyone feel good. We have from,
I'm sorry,
yes,
Louise said that. She said, who
Louise
was the
was
last person?
offering, Tristan was saying, have your boys run around.
Kristen, you are so on it. Yes, I think of boys as like the Energizer Bunny, and you just need to drain and suck some of that energy out of them so that they can come in and engage in the classroom. It really does make a difference. I used to let my boys ride their bikes. in my
Yes,
neighborhood before we got in the car to
such
go to school.
such a good idea. Austin says, give them big responsibilities. Katie, believe they are doing their best and have good intentions and really ask questions and seek to understand who they are at their core with compassion and open arms and meet them where they are at and what their behavior is communicating. Such a good point. Behavior is communication. So what are they telling us? What do they need? Really take the time to get to know the child. Lori says she has two boys in her class who love fishing. So today she read a book about Fishing Town, and then we crafted origami fish. I found out there were 5 other boys who love fishing. I didn't know it was an interest, so I need to make sure I take the time to know each child. And Jude says, and teachers can try to plan their day to begin with physical activity.
Yes.
Louise says they have PE first thing in the morning. That's awesome. And Amy has dropped a link in the chat about the big body play. So there's a link to
Wow.
there. And Monique says, we do the same thing in the secondary program, recess as soon as they arrive. Oh, yes, that's so important for secondary students who are still waking up well into mid morning. Deidre says, I'm interested. How does this play out for boys who are neurodiverse? So, question.
Yes. So that's a whole nother conversation. Um, Neurodivergent boys from a expressive receptive language, divergent boys from a attention and impulse inhibitory control. There's so many things we could go into in that conversation, but there are some really good resources. There's a really great book that's out. It's called the ADHD Child 2.0. So if you're looking specifically at that, but I know there's so many good resources looking at the language component, if there is a developmental delay, if the child is on the autistic spectrum, there's so many different ways to look at that. But boys have a heart, and I have found that no matter what the neurodivergent learner is, what they're experiencing on a daily basis, if I could really connect with them and know what their sport team was, or that they like to fish, or that they went camping or hiking, or that made a difference. So some of what I'm sharing with you is getting to the heart of the boy, and it really doesn't matter who the child is or if they have a neurodivergent learning style or social style.
And Sheila, I'm going to drop in the chat something that was brought to my attention recently is the character strengths inventory for children. And it's from the Institute on Character. It's free. So
Great.
another way to get to know your children, your students in class on another level.
Lindsay, could you go to the next slide, friend?
Yes. Let me return to sharing. Thanks everyone for your patience.
Okay. So when Lindsay shares the next slide, it starts my resource section. And this is slide 18, Lindsay. And so I have 4 books here. I have The Wonder of Boys, which really was the groundbreaking work probably about 20 years ago about boy development that opened up so much research. There's also Please Teach Me Like I Am a Boy, and that spans all different ages. The Wild Things, The Art of Nurturing Boys. It's one of the books I read by Stephen James and David Thomas. And then Mothering Boys. So if you're a mother and you didn't have brothers or cousins or boys around you, boys can be really puzzling. So I always recommend that book to moms, The Mothering of Boys. So those start off our research section. Our next section is there's a good TED Talks on the gender gap and how boys fall through the cracks. And it really is an equity issue. And that TED conversation can also shed light on boy behavior. Lindsay, could you? Perfect. So, another quote by Maria Montessori: watching a child make it obvious that the development of his mind comes about through his movements. That's just taking us back to that concept that they really do need movement, and that's how they're developing their soul. I have a quote from Stephen James and David Thomas from The Wild Things. It's our task as parents, educators, coaches, mentors, youth workers, counselors, and adult leaders to recognize the unique heart of each boy and encourage him to live from the depth and breadth of it. You can contact me. I'm available through the Andrews Educational Institute, and I do offer leadership and coaching for teachers, and I also offer that on a sliding scale. So if you have a leader that really does need support, I'm very open to speaking with them and seeing if I can be helpful. And thank you for having me tonight, Lindsay. I really have enjoyed our time together. And I'm wondering if anybody has any other questions before we finish this evening. More resources, more resources. There's so many here. Ross Green's book is Lost at School. That's a really good one. Parenting Boys is Bringing Up Boys by James Dobson. I think, Lindsay, you contributed some of these resources to this PowerPoint at one point. So lots of really good resources.
Yes, we had a chance to work together on that. I followed your lead, Sheila, because you're just a wealth of knowledge. So remember we were at we presented together last year in Phoenix.
We sure did.
Yes,
we sure
and
did.
I'm so excited that I'll get to see you at the conference again in just in a week, right? So
yes,
oh my gosh, it's coming. Yeah, we'll be in Atlanta with the IMC conference, and lots of great speakers. It's always such a treat to be a part of that conference, and I can't wait to see you there in person, Sheila.
I appreciate that, Lindsay. If anyone does have any questions, you feel free to reach out to me or connect through Lindsay. I'm very happy to talk with teachers or parents or anyone that could really benefit from understanding the biology of boys.
It's very important, and there is a crisis in education around boys, and as you said earlier, falling through the cracks. So it is an equity issue, and I know in the UK they've been sounding the alarm that they're losing so many boys who are deciding not to pursue advanced degrees or to go into higher ed. So this is something that we should all be thinking about because it will affect long-term outcomes for our society. So thank you all for being here this evening. If you're interested in more information about Sarasota University, I encourage you to go to sarasotauniversity.edu. Sheila, you're getting compliments in the chat. Folks are thanking you for your presentation. Giselle says that she learned so much and the information was so helpful. And I agree. I took so many notes tonight. I have a grandson on the way. So I wanted to jot it all down. I've got work ahead. So, and near and dear to my heart. So Elise says, we love you, Sheila. It's so true. We all love you, Sheila. You are so inspiring.
I appreciate that. I do. I appreciate it. Well, Lindsay, thank you. And thank you, Sarasota University, for having me this evening. And have a wonderful night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening. And thanks again, Sheila. See you in Atlanta next week.